So the next talk is called What We've Learned as a Master Integrator. Thomas McGowan has joined us from 20 years in the technology and real estate industries, including experience in AV, workspace fit-out, IP networks, automation, and RF engineering. He's currently a member of the Institute of Engineers in Ireland. As CEO of HereWorks, Tomas is passionate about finding innovative ways to deliver master systems integration services to improve the human-building interaction and sustainability of smart buildings. This has led to the development of HereWorks Happy, a smart building system and personal application that helps buildings achieve happiness, ensuring the well-being of occupants while the building operates at maximum efficiency and minimal carbon emissions. So we'd like to welcome to the stage Thomas McGowan, CEO of HereWorks. Thomas, please join us.
Great, thank you, Bob. I wish Bob would actually introduce me everywhere I went because thanks, Mel, Bob, and thanks for being here. Well, I am Tomas. I'm going to click on here. So I am the CEO of HereWorks, and we're a master systems integrator based in Dublin in Ireland. I'm an electronic engineer by trade, and one thing that Bob didn't mention is that I have a lifelong background in the construction and built environment industry as managing director of McKeown Group. Now, I'm, I suppose, the wee upstart in that company that took us on a digital transformation and started the technology division that's now HereWorks. Construction was just way too much like hard work. I have an unusual passion, and I actually had to borrow a slide from Matthew earlier. He used one of my friend's slides, so I had to use a different one. But I have an unusual passion for big data, and specifically the human behavioral insights we can garner from smart building data. HereWorks came from a global systems integrator, and then we primarily audio-visual systems, any kind of smart building systems you'd see in commercial buildings. In 2019, we had a bit of a discussion, and we had a view of what the future of smart buildings looked like. And in that year, we founded our MSI service and also our HereWorks Happy platform, which is a software as a service platform for human-centric smart buildings. We primarily work with big tech. Google would be one of our biggest clients, but more and more we're actually seeing we're seeing interest in MSI from various different industries. We've actually got an MSI job coming up with a university in Dublin, which is great. I don't know, is there any Dereks in the audience? Anyway, that ruined that joke anyway. But what did we learn? That's what we're here to talk about. Over the next 20 minutes, I'll basically talk about that we're still learning, that the industry is learning, that our clients are learning, that our software is learning. I'll talk about what we've discovered along the way, some of the pitfalls, and what our view of the future is. And hopefully, if I do my job right, you'll come away with the understanding that if we focus on the human, we'll get everything else right. If we focus on the happiness and well-being of the humans within our building, well then studies have shown that productivity will increase. If we focus on designing great spaces for those people, we use efficient use of space, well then we're going to hit our sustainability targets. So it's 5 o'clock, and just to see if you are all awake, and just for me to get to know the room as well. By raise of hands, who actually knows what an MSI is? That's a good few. What about a DBC, or a digital building consultant? About the same number of people. What about brick or haystack? And who could define the difference? So the numbers are getting less. And God forbid does anyone want to define what a digital twin is, but we'll not go back there. So what is an MSI anyway? I keep pressing the wrong button here. What is an MSI anyway? And we're not going to get into it. I think most people have some idea that what an MSI is for. But you get the problem here. Everyone in this room is into our smart building professionals. It's using simple enough language to get across to our clients, to the people we deal with, to the wider design teams and construction teams that we work with, the value that we bring, the value that smart building data can bring to the clients. I compare, I suppose, the difference between a smart building and an intelligent building to my friend here who has an incredibly high IQ but no common sense. He hasn't learned anything from the data that's in front of him. And that's the same with a smart building. We fill all these buildings with beautiful technologies and we get all this sensor data, but we actually learn nothing from it. We don't take any knowledge from what's doing. I got a call the other day from a real estate director of a very large tech multinational who are building a new HQ in Dublin. We weren't working with them at the time. And he called me because he was concerned about a boardroom, a very fancy boardroom that they were designing, and the amount of sensors that were going to be installed into the boardroom. And he was concerned from an aesthetics point of view. Now, I'm not great on aesthetics, so of course I asked a really innocent question. Well, what are all these sensors doing? And of course we quickly realized that there was a double up of sensors. I asked then, well, who was specifying these sensors? And there was the BMS people, there was the mech and elec people, there was the audio-visual people, there was even human resources had requested some occupancy information on from the rooms. So again, I asked another innocent question. What was the single source of truth? And panic set in, of course, because there was none. And nobody was taking that overall view of where all this data was going. And that obviously is what an MSI is all about. But they had no digital building consultant, and they had no MSI, and the fit-out had already started. So this is, again, one of our next learnings, is that one of the biggest pitfalls in smart building projects is late engagement. And I don't just mean late engagement of the MSI, but late engagement with even the general contractor, with the specialist subcontractors, even with the client, to understand, well, what are we actually going to do with all this data? So how do we solve that? Well, it's actually pretty simple, isn't it? Early engagement. So I'm a big fan of the relationship between the digital building consultant, the DBC, and the master systems integrator. They do play two very different complementary roles. And a DBC should be involved from the very start, from stage one, in the preparation of the brief, to understand what does the client want from the building, how agile is this building going to be, what's this building going to be used for in the next 10, 20 years' time. So they should start thinking about the technologies and how it's going to be integrated into the space. But an MSI should be appointed no later than, I suppose, ideally at the end of stage 3, so the develop, design, and spatial coordination stage, or at the very latest at stage 4, pre-construction. But importantly, an MSI should be appointed before the general contractor, before the specialist subcontractors. Because it's the MSI role, obviously, to define that data model and the ontologies that we've been speaking about all day here, define the naming schemes, and define actually what are the responsibilities that each contractor is going to have on that project. So in reality, it's ideal if the MSI is even involved in choosing those contractors. Now, an MSI can always be novated to the general contractor at a later stage in the project, but really early engagement is really key here. And this is where we had another learning, and that is that while technical expertise is obviously very important from an MSI's point of view, but people skills are every bit as important. We walk into we talked about big tech, some of our clients there. We're dealing with general contractors that do billions of turnover per year. We're dealing with specialist subcontractors that do possibly the same. They're global companies, and they're used to delivering projects, and they're very good at it. But they want to get the job done in and out. Now, suddenly, you're introducing a new layer. You're introducing an MSI, and they have a responsibility to that MSI. The MSI holds the top-level authority for data integration in that building, and you have to get their buy-in. So you have to take them on a journey, and you have to explain to them, obviously, the benefits, number one, but number two, actually create tools that makes their life really easy. It's no longer acceptable for a BMS control engineer to walk in with a laptop and just start naming things without consideration for the next guy, or what the next guy, when the next guy might use, or girl, might use an underscore or a hyphen. They just want to get the job done. Now, our background is in we come from I mentioned a construction background, but as a systems integrator, we have that experience of delivering projects, of project management, of bringing in lots of different stakeholders and working to time constraints. So those people skills are very important. Agile. I'm not going to say much about this other than construction and FM need to catch up to keep up with the pace of what we're doing. We need to introduce new project management skills to our construction projects. So I explained that HereWorks have 3 different divisions. We have system integrator, we have master systems integrator, and we have our software as a service platform, HereWorks Happy. And our software development team operate across the last 2. And we've developed a system, as we said, called HereWorks Happy, but I'm just going to talk about one element of it, which is the HereWorks Happy score. Now, the score is simple. It's a representation of the well-being or the happiness of people within that building. 0% is bad, 100% is good. Obviously, we're looking at trends, we're trying to achieve 100%, and we're applying machine learning to predict actually tomorrow's score. But where does it get the information from? Well, it gets the information from all that MSI data that we've been talking about here, all the sensor data, anything that comes from the building. But it also takes information from anything that might impact that user's, that building occupant's journey on a given day. So that could be the weather. It could be the traffic. It could be the bus timetable. Anything that might affect that user on a day. We also ask questions. We onboard people onto the platform. We understand that a building in Dublin is very different to a building in Dubai. And we weight the scores differently depending on people's preferences in that building. And then we combine all that into one score, and we present it to the different stakeholders in the building. But by joining all those data sources that would not have been typically visible to your average, say, facilities management team, we start to join the realms, or join the worlds of facilities management, real estate, and human resources. Because we have space occupancy systems for the real estate, we have all our IoT data from facilities management, from BMS, from human resources, we have user sentiment feedback, and any other systems that human resources might do. Now, here's where we learn something else. If you ask a facilities manager what their role is or what their job is, you'll get an answer, something along the lines of, well, keeping everything running and making sure the building is running smoothly, or looking after the air handling unit on the roof and changing the filters and whatever. If you move on to real estate, you'll get an answer about cultivating great spaces to work. And then if you ask human resources, then you might get an answer about employee well-being. So what we realized is, and this is, I don't know if many of you are familiar with the Jobs to be Done framework, but what we realized is that human resources, and real estate to a slightly lesser extent, are carrying out that aspirational job of creating truly inspired employees. Whereas facilities managers are carrying out the functional job of fixing things and solving problems. Now, we know the role of FM is changing. With predictive maintenance models, it's no longer a requirement to change filters every month or every year. We change them when they're required. We have systems that will self-calibrate. We have vibration monitoring that will warn us ahead of a catastrophic problem. So we're even changing how we clean. We're cleaning things on demand now. Why are we cleaning bathrooms every hour if no one's used them? We're moving to a more Uber-style approach to on-demand services where the building actually organizes the cleaning. So MSIs can help the FM teams reimagine themselves and become that concierge style or arms around service that's really demanded now in modern, agile, smart buildings. By feeding them with well-rounded human-centric information that they wouldn't have generally been available, we can then buy them into that aspirational job of creating truly inspired employees. And what about energy and sustainability? Well, I could harp on here about the benefits of an MSI to energy and sustainability targets, but to me, that's a minimum requirement for entry. We can do all kinds of things like fault diagnostics, detection diagnostics. The systems we put in to modern buildings are, from the start at least, very efficient. But if we focus on the human and how they will behave and send them to parts of the building where we know they will be comfortable, if we close parts of the building when we know it's going to be quiet, and if we help design appropriately sized workspaces, well, we're going to save energy by default. Now, I've mentioned inspired employees a couple of times, and I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the term, but there's a definition. But Bain & Co. did a bit of research there a couple of years ago, and they found that inspired employees who are profoundly happy and feel a connection to their work with no barriers are 225% more productive than merely satisfied employees. So if you think about that for a minute, an inspired employee will do 2.25 times as much work as a merely satisfied employee. But the word I want you to really hone in on there is that no barriers. So what is a barrier? They've no barriers to their work. Well, you know the feeling. You get to the office, there's no queue for the coffee. You get your favorite hot desk by the window beside your colleagues. It's just at the right temperature. You go down to the boardroom for your meeting. You log into the boardroom, everything just works. You have no barriers. It just ran very smoothly. So by concentrating on the human and creating amazing employee experience, we're helping to solve the two biggest problems of our days for the C-suite that we spoke about earlier. That is finding and retaining great people while hitting our sustainability targets. I think we've probably done this one to death today, but you can see where the value is in this. This is for every €3 you spend on energy, you spend or €30 on real estate, you spend 300 on people. So remember that inspired employee? If you can even achieve part of that 225%, the impact is huge. Big tech love MSIs, they do, but why? It's because security. And again, this is something else we learned, that probably the biggest hook for all the... Are there any MSIs actually here? Other MSIs? Well, one of the biggest hooks for MSI is security. We talk a lot about IoT. With every IoT device, there's nearly a cloud service to go with it. So you've all these devices inside in your clients' networks. They're sending information to God knows where. To me, IoT is the Wild West of smart buildings. Big tech know that. And I mean, even, like, God forbid that the information you're sending is personally identifiable. But even from a simple occupancy or people counting sensor, even in its encrypted form, the data that comes from that can tell a lot about what's going on in a building, purely by the actual volume of data that's coming from it. The other thing we've learned, and we definitely need to move away from in the construction industry as a whole, is this idea of this one and done, this capital expenditure, that, you know, a job needs to be delivered as a capital expenditure. An MSI's role only starts at the construction phase, or if it's a refit stage, at the refit stage. And it's the boring part. It's getting all that information into the data lake. You know, you can make it sound as sexy as you want, but I mean, we're getting data into a data lake. The exciting bit happens after we get all that data in there. After we've a year of service, after we've 2 years, look at the environment we just came out of. Our workplace has changed forever, and they're almost, they'll never go back. Our workplace is now agile. We have to start delivering, we have to start thinking of smart buildings as a service. And I've seen a great, or actually, yes. So the exciting bit happens when we start looking at that. What insights are we going to get from that data? If we apply machine learning and AI, what are we actually going to see? I've seen a great quote the other day. The most exciting phrase to hear in science, and the one that heralds new discoveries, is not eureka, but it's "that's funny." And that's exactly the same with smart buildings. It's the insights that we're not expecting that are going to be the really interesting ones from this. People often ask me, well, what kind of insights are you going to get? And like, we all know that we're going to use more water when there's more people in the building. But what happens, say, on a rainy Wednesday when the coffee machine runs out of coffee? And how does that affect our profits? How does it affect our revenue? How does it affect our our ticket closing time? So that's what we're looking for. It's the things we're not expecting. That's funny. I'm out of time. Hopefully, I've done my job, and you're thinking that whether we're designing the smart building technologies or whether we're trying to get the project delivered more efficiently, the MSI should focus firmly on the human. How can we make the human more comfortable, and how can we get buy-in from the specialist subcontractors with our exemplar people skills? And that's me.